Before we get started, I wanted to let everybody know that I have a new book that is available on Kindle, and it is called Recommended Reading for the True Conservative. 50 pages long, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Other than that, it's $3.99. So again, that is Recommended Reading for the True Conservative. And now, on with the Pat podcast.
Engineer joke number one. 3 men sentenced to death by guillotine. A priest, a drunk, and an engineer. First they put in the priest. He looks up, he says, Heavenly Father, I put my life in your hands, whatever your will be. They drop the blade, it stops an inch from his throat. The executioner says, Father, it's a miracle. You're free to go. Next they put in the drunk. He looks up, he says, me too. They drop the blade again, it stops an inch from his throat. The executioner said, this is divine intervention. You can go. Next they put in the engineer. He looks up, he says, you know, I can fix that.
Good morning. It's Monday, Ukraine Monday, May the 18th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Ukraine. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Varney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Check out this timeline and you can see what's happening to your money. Kind of convoluted. Overnight, a drone attack on the United Arab Emirates nuclear power plant causing some damage. The president's not happy. He put out a message saying, for Iran, the clock is ticking and they'd better get moving fast. According to Axios, Trump has convened a meeting in the Situation Room for tomorrow. That is ominous. The Situation Room is where the commander-in-chief gets a real-time view of the latest action. The first thing to move was the price of oil. It had moved well above $100 a barrel. At one stage, it's $107. It's come back down again. You're looking at $103 right now. The price of gas, that's unchanged and stubbornly holding on to $4.51 a gallon. In California, regular set you back $6.15. And diesel, this is very important for the manufacturing and farming sectors, $5.63. That's up $2 a gallon from a year ago. And that is inflationary, so up go interest rates, but that's been reversed. The 10-year Treasury at one point hit well above 4.6%. Now it's down, 4.57. The 2-year well above 4%, but 4.05. It had been much higher than that. Stocks started the morning sharply lower, but they, too, have reversed course. The Dow Industrials up 20, S&P up 15, but look at that NASDAQ go, up 160 points. NVIDIA bucking the trend. It reports Wednesday, reaching $229 a share. That's pre-market. NVIDIA has a market value well above $5 trillion. Bitcoin, well, that's in retreat. It's back to 77,500. On the show today, a political win for the president. Senator Bill Cassidy came in third in the Louisiana Republican primary. Cassidy had voted to convict the president on impeachment charges. Trump took revenge. It's another signal that Republicans who oppose Trump do so at their peril. Next up, another die-hard opponent, Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie. National identity and Christianity debated on both sides of the Atlantic over the weekend. In London, 50,000 turned out to portray Britain as a Christian country. They were opposed by a Muslim demonstration where the Palestinian flag was raised. In Washington, D.C., thousands turned out for the Rededicate 250. That's an event that portrayed America as a fundamentally Christian society. The president read from the Bible to the crowd. One more. In Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass proposes solar power for street lighting. She can't control the theft of copper wire from conventional streetlights. She wants to be re-elected. Her campaign is struggling. Monday, May the 18th, 2026.
And there you go. Shifty Stew, Simulated Stew, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. You know, people often underestimate the power of truth, not just as a concept, but as a weapon, especially in the face of manipulation. And there's something profoundly dangerous about individuals who distort reality for their own gain. Liberals, specifically. Liberals construct their identity on a foundation of illusion. That illusion is carefully crafted layer by layer around an inflated sense of self, entitlement, and superiority. They spend years, sometimes decades, manufacturing a version of themselves that appears untouchable, admired, and powerful. But beneath that image is something very fragile: insecurity, fear, and a deep avoidance of accountability. What keeps that illusion intact is a complex interplay of manipulation, projection, and selective truth-telling. The liberal doesn't just lie to others. They lie to themselves. And because these liberals are often charismatic or persuasive, many conservatives fall into their psychological trap. They start to believe the illusion, or at least learn to live with it. But here's the thing. The truth has a unique property. It disrupts anything that isn't real. Not always instantly, but inevitably. The moment you begin to speak truth to a liberal, you're not just challenging a person, you're challenging an entire psychological structure. That structure depends on conservatives buying into it. It depends on silence, on compliance, on others turning a blind eye to inconsistencies. When we introduce truth into that environment, it's like throwing a wrench into a machine that's running on illusion. The machine doesn't just stutter, it begins to collapse. That's why truth is not just resisted, it's feared. A liberal doesn't fear truth the way a rational person may fear criticism. They fear it because it threatens to unmask them. Their entire sense of power depends on maintaining an image, on being seen as competent, intelligent, dominant, or even benevolent. The truth, especially when spoken clearly and without emotion, cuts through that image like a knife. And here's the terrifying part. For the liberal, it doesn't take much. We don't need a long confrontation or dramatic speech. Sometimes a single sentence is enough to send shock waves through their carefully curated identity. When we say, for example, "That's not true, and you know it," to a liberal, it lands differently than it would to a well-adjusted person. A reasonable individual might defend themselves, reflect, or even acknowledge the possibility of error. But a liberal? That sentence is radioactive. It threatens their mask. It forces them, even for a moment, to confront the gap between who they claim to be and who they are. And that confrontation is what they fear most. That fear doesn't come from weakness in the traditional sense. It comes from psychological dependency. The liberal's addicted to their ego the way a drug addict is addicted to a high. Their ego has to be constantly fed by admiration, control, dominance, or manipulation. But truth deprives them of that. It shines a light into the dark corners they've spent their entire life trying to hide. And when light enters, darkness doesn't argue. It disappears. Most people assume that liberals are fearless, that they dominate rooms and control conversations because they're strong. But that's not strength. That's defense. It's armor. And truth bypasses armor. It doesn't attack the surface. It attacks the foundation. That's why many liberals become defensive, angry, or dismissive when confronted. It's not because the confrontation is wrong. It's because it's right. Deep down, they know it's right. They know the illusion is fragile. That's why they surround themselves with enablers, people who either don't see the truth, don't speak it, or are too afraid to challenge them. But when someone finally speaks up and does it with clarity, not aggression, it creates a fracture. And once there's a fracture in the liberal's illusion, it begins to spread. Even if they try to patch it, the illusion is never the same. They begin to see you differently, not as someone to dominate, but as someone dangerous because you can see them. You're not hypnotized by the charm or the manipulation. And more importantly, you've shown them and possibly others that their illusion isn't foolproof, and so they begin to fear you, not because you hurt them, but because you exposed them, because you reminded them of something. They work every day to forget that the truth is more powerful than their performance. Liberals thrive on appearances. Their entire psychological world is built on the belief that as long as they are not seen for who they really are, they remain in control. They're not simply concerned with being liked or respected. They're consumed with the need to appear superior, flawless, untouchable. But this facade is sustained through careful image management, manipulation, and denial, not through genuine character. What truly threatens a liberal is not criticism or confrontation alone. What they fear more than anything is exposure. And exposure only happens when someone speaks the truth of their behavior plainly, directly, and without being drawn into their game. That is what undermines their entire strategy. It doesn't take shouting or accusations, it just takes clarity. Criticism to most people is unpleasant but manageable. It might sting, but it can be taken in, processed, and used for growth. The liberal, however, is not capable of that kind of internal processing because their identity is not flexible. It's fragile. It cannot tolerate the idea that there's something wrong, something flawed, something imperfect within them. When someone criticizes them, they may react with anger or defensiveness or mockery, but these are surface reactions. Underneath them is fear, deep, paralyzing fear that the criticism might be true. That fear isn't about the criticism itself, it's about what follows if others start to believe it. If the illusion cracks, their entire control system begins to break down. Exposure is different from criticism in that it reveals something essential. It names what they're doing, not just what they're saying. It brings to light the motives behind the manipulation, the tactics, the charm, and the emotional chaos hidden beneath the surface. This is where the liberal starts to unravel. When you say something like, "You're shifting blame so you don't have to take responsibility," you're not just offering a critique, you're pulling the curtain back. You're showing everyone in the room, including the liberal, that the game has been recognized. That kind of statement doesn't give them an easy path out. They can't just deny it and move on because it's not an attack on their actions. It's a description of their pattern. And that kind of truth cuts deep. This is why liberals spend so much time cultivating allies. People who reinforce their illusions, echo their version of reality, and help shield them from accountability. These allies may be friends, coworkers, even family members. The liberal will reward them for their loyalty with flattery, privilege, or favor. But the moment someone steps out of line and starts to see clearly, they become a threat. That person doesn't even have to be confrontational. Just seeing the pattern, just recognizing the manipulation is enough to make the liberal feel endangered. And if one person wakes up, others might too. The liberal's biggest fear is being seen without the mask, because what lies beneath it is often a hollow, underdeveloped self. Back in a minute. Thank you now, Dr. Berg.
Advanced liver problems rarely have any symptoms at all. No pain, the whites of your eyes and your skin is not yellow. No warning signs because your liver doesn't have nerve endings. But the sac around the liver does have nerve endings. So when your liver swells up, it can refer pain to your right shoulder right through here and the upper trap right through here. And many people go to the massage therapist and they start working this out, but it keeps coming back. They don't know it's being referred by the liver. So a lot of liver problems build up between 10, 20, 30 years without the person knowing about it. So it starts with fat accumulating in the liver, which no symptoms. You're just eating a normal, regular diet compared to everyone else. Of course, an average person consumes over 50% of their calories being ultra-processed foods, which is making the fat in the liver, but no symptoms until it starts creating inflammation. But even with inflammation, it's called hepatitis, coming from the fatty liver, still you're rarely going to have symptoms until you start getting advanced scar tissue, because the inflammation then causes scar tissue. This is called fibrosis, and then eventually cirrhosis, which is very difficult to reverse. A fatty liver, an inflamed liver can be reversed, but a cirrhotic liver filled with scar tissue is very difficult to reverse if it's in the advanced stages. This is why you can't go by symptoms, because there's rarely any symptoms. Now, if you look down right now at your feet and you notice that your stomach is bulging out, you pretty much know you have a fatty liver. We don't know if it has scar tissue, but belly fat is extra fat that is being spilled over from your liver that has no more space in the liver, so it spills out around the organs in your abdomen. And you might even go to the doctor and get your liver tested, and there's no positive problems with liver enzymes. Liver problems are a silent disease. So the best way to determine if you have a fatty liver is to get an ultrasound of your liver. But the good news is the liver is a very resilient organ. It has the capacity to regenerate if you get it in time. So how do you do that? Get rid of any ultra-processed food in your diet. This includes three things: the sugars, the refined starches like maltodextrin, modified food starch, corn flour, wheat flour. Get rid of all that, and also get rid of seed oils. Instead, consume animal protein with eggs. And by the way, the egg yolk is loaded with choline that has the capacity to help reduce fat on your liver. Another really good food for the liver is sauerkraut. It's fermented, it has probiotics, and there's certain things in cabbage that are very beneficial to your liver and your gut. And what's really amazing about going on a low-carb diet, within 2 weeks, you can potentially reduce up to 50% of your liver fat.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, motivation.
Some people, y'all start losing and you just stop playing. You just like, I give up, I quit. But there's some people, they just like, nah, I ain't going down like that. They're committed. And they get to places other people never get to. Some of y'all soft. There's no better word for it. You're soft. You want to be a champion, but you don't want to look like a champion. I don't hang with people who can only get up when they got something to motivate them. That's not somebody I want to hang out with. I want to hang with somebody, I don't care what the circumstances, I don't care what the situation, you keep grinding and you stay persistent and you lock in. And you just get up on Monday and grind, and get up on Tuesday and grind, and get up on Wednesday and grind, and get up on Thursday and grind, and get up on Friday and grind.
It's going to be a grind. It's also a grind not having the life you want. They're both going to be a grind. Choose the one you want. But I am addicted to the grind. If you're not going to be addicted to the grind, get out. Go sell your dream for a salary and give it up. But if you want to be great,
You got to be addicted to what you do. You got to be addicted to winning.
Interested is a hobby. You can be interested in many things. You can fall in and out of your interest, but your obsession stays with you all the time.
Kobe Bryant was not interested in winning championships. He was obsessed. And obsession comes in the small details that nobody pays attention to.
When you're obsessed with something, people think you're crazy. When you're obsessed, they warn you. Because guess what? When you're obsessed about something, almost no one else understands it. They're like, why do you care so much? Why are you spending so much time on that? And they start judging you. They think you're weird for liking it. That's how you know the difference.
When you look at the most successful people on the planet, people say, he's gifted. He's smarter than me. He just somehow knows more than me. He had a better background. He got lucky. You've heard the cliche because it's true. The harder I work, the luckier I get.
You hear people who got to work smarter, not harder. You got to work smarter and you got to work harder.
What is in us, we have no idea until you start trying hard. And I mean really trying hard when you're obsessed with, hey, this is my new norm.
My new norm is you wake up and you suffer. This is your new life. This is who you are.
This isn't always fun. You're going to win in life? Then it is win or die. Win or die. Extreme obsession. This guy's he's really extreme. Yeah! Look at the freaking life. They can buy whatever they want. They travel the world. They're killers at what they do. I mean, come on. Is it bad to be extreme? Is it bad to be obsessed? Well, if you don't know what you want, it would be. But if you know what you want, you can attack it viciously.
Interested people watch obsessed people change the world.
Your vision has to keep growing, your mind has to keep growing, and you have to keep getting better. You bring your income because you have to. You have to deliver.
You don't need somebody else to tell you to get out of bed. They don't need to tell you there's more to do. It's what you demand of yourself.
Hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anybody else expects of you. Never excuse yourself. You want to know where your $1 million payday is? Go in the mirror. Look in there. Right there in front of your face. That's you. But you gotta be obsessed with it.
Everyone else is looking for other individuals to do stuff for you. Stop looking for help from everybody else. It starts and it ends with you.
You're the secret to make all this happen.
Take ownership from this day forward, because what you are to be, you are becoming right now. But if you build strong habits today, you can be and do whatever you want, and nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you but you. There should be a sense of urgency. We don't have another 100. We don't have another 150. We don't have another 200 years. One day you will be gone, but you may not necessarily be a legend. You're going to die regardless. Being a legend is a choice.
When you wake up every single day, you better create your own sense of urgency, because some kind of way, urgency is a motivator.
What I've learned about the greats is that they understand it's a sense of urgency. Once the clock goes up, it's a W or an L. There is no middle ground. You either win or you lose. You're going to understand that pain is a part of the process. You're going to understand that the more pain you go through and you can get through, that you qualify for this work. You're qualified for the rewards. You're qualified for the success.
You're qualified because you do the ugly. The ugly is doing all the stuff that people who lose aren't willing to do. You're going to have to put up with some rejection. You got to put yourself in an uncomfortable place. You got to focus your energy. You got to push yourself physically and mentally. Doing all that makes me eventually think I'm doing stuff other people aren't willing to do, so I should get stuff other people aren't going to get.
And that was motivating. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. So Spencer Pratt and others, but let's say Spencer Pratt in particular, who's running, I believe, for mayor of Los Angeles. And he runs all these clever ads, but they all suck because the Republicans just don't get it. They just don't get it. They keep preaching to the choir, and he's doing the same thing. He's doing it in a more clever way than his predecessors, but he's still preaching to the choir. He's still on about property rights. Oh, it's a horrible, awful thing that I've got to live in a trailer after Karen Bass burned down my house. Well, that sells with Republicans. It's a classic message of don't vote for Karen Bass. Vote for me instead. Well, no Republican's going to vote for Karen Bass. Of course they're going to vote for you. But he's going to do all this and keep doing it because he gets all this positive feedback. Wow, what clever ads, and what a great guy. Oh, he's hitting all the right notes. Except when he loses to Karen Bass, he's going to scratch his head. The Republican Party in California is going to scratch their collective heads and say, how come? Why? I don't get it. Must be low information voters or something like that. They've never gotten it. They don't get it today. It doesn't look like they'll ever understand. They have to reach Democrats. If you want to get rid of Karen Bass, you got to raise her negatives. And you're not going to raise her negatives with property rights issues. Nobody on the left cares about that. You're not going to get her negatives up by saying she taxes too much. Nobody on the left cares about that as a political issue. As a personal issue, of course. So, you have to talk to them. If you're going to talk about the fires, which they should, but you got to talk about it in terms of carbon dioxide. Look at all the tons and tons of pollution Karen Bass put into the air. This is Karen Bass's fire. That'd be my argument. If I was Mr. Spencer Pratt. She's putting tons and tons of CO2 in the atmosphere, and she's done nothing to mitigate that damage. Nothing. What has she done for the homeless? She's talked a lot. She's spent a lot of money. But today we have just as many homeless people on the street as we did when she started. Those are liberal issues. That's what the liberals care about. That's what he should be doing. But he doesn't do it. So again, Spencer Pratt is going to, he's got all these clever commercials and all the Republicans think, oh, wow, he's got a shot. No, he doesn't. He's going to lose like they always do. And then they're going to scratch their heads and say, how come? Because they're a bunch of dumbasses. Back in a minute. Thank you. There's an issue, a budget issue. The Trump administration has asked for, or says they will ask for, $1.5 trillion for the Defense Department. He's getting ahead of himself. Really what needs to happen first is we need to make sure that as Republicans and conservatives, we are being frugal. And the way to know whether or not we're being frugal is with zero-based budgeting. So that means that every time we do a budget, every agency needs to start from the very beginning and justify every nickel that they're getting now and every nickel more that they want in the future. I'm not opposed to the Defense Department getting $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion or whatever, as long as they justify it. And they have to justify every single nickel. And then we can go from there. We can look at their justifications. We can look at their rationalizations, whatever, and make a decision as to whether or not that information is, or those wants and needs are valid. But without zero-based budgeting, there's no way for us to know. So the issue, again, because conservatives, the hallmark of the conservative, or one of the hallmarks, is frugality zero-based budgeting is a must. Back in a minute. Thank you. A little bit of Mornings with Maria, and she's going to get into a pseudo news segment, but she's going to get it completely wrong.
And stocks trading higher. The 2 years down 3.5 basis points right now. Let's get to the story of the moment in terms of the strike underway. Talks are resuming this morning between the MTA and 5 striking unions after federal mediators stepped in over the weekend. Passengers traveling to and from Long Island, New York are stuck, facing serious headaches this morning. The Long Island Railroad workers are on strike following tense contract negotiations between union leaders and the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA. Nearly 300,000 passengers stranded. As a result of that, Governor Kathy Hochul urging remote work right now. MTA Chairman Jano Lieber fully blaming the unions, saying, quote, "Our last offer literally gave them everything they said they wanted in terms of pay, but they rejected even that." For me, it's become apparent that these unions always intended to strike. Their strategy is to inconvenience Long Islanders and to try to force the MTA and the state to do a bad deal.
Okay, so there you go. This is the way it always works with unions and union strikes, is that the issue becomes management versus labor, and the consumer, in this case passengers, just don't count. They don't even exist. Okay, because if and when the unions get more pay and benefits, somebody's got to pay for it, and it's going to come out of the passengers' pockets. But there's nobody here in this negotiation representing the passengers. Congress, if they're going to support unions and unionization, they must have a mechanism whereby the consumer is represented. The consumer is at the table. Otherwise, this is ridiculous. This is why our prices go up and up and up and up and up. The consumers must be represented, because it is what is best for the consumer is best for all. And the reason for that is because at the end of the day, everybody, whether you're a CEO or a union schlub, at the end of the day, we're all consumers. We're all customers. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Ukraine.
The Russian military is breaking records again, and they're the exact kinds of records that Russia does not want to be breaking again. Something has gone drastically wrong in Putin's vaunted spring offensive against Ukraine, as the death toll has climbed to levels that we've never seen before. Putin has achieved the truly unbelievable. He's winning, all right, only he's winning at losing. We don't mean to sound like a broken record about the records being broken, but it's all just getting so ridiculous for Russia right now. Let's start with the casualties. During the first 4 months of 2026, Russia managed to burn through 130,000 of its soldiers that were killed or wounded, according to statistics from Russia's defense ministry, United 24 media reports. That's a record in its own right. Russia admitting that its meat grinder tactics are causing casualties on such a grand scale is crazy. And even crazier is that this information coming out of Russia rather than Ukraine likely means that the figures are being massaged. The real numbers may be higher. The 2 spring months of the year have also seen Russia record grim records, as more than 70,000 of the soldiers that it has lost came during March and April. March saw Russia lose 35,351 of its troops to death or injury, and April followed that up with 35,203. Add the extra day to April that you get in March, and it's likely that Ukraine would have broken the record that it set a month earlier. And if this pace continues, Russia is on track to lose more than 100,000 of its soldiers during the first 3 months of spring alone. Could it get any worse for Putin? Oh yes, and you're about to find out how. Let's zoom in on the casualties for a second. The term casualty in war refers to any soldiers that a nation loses, so it covers soldiers who are killed, those injured to the point where they are removed from the battlefield, and soldiers who have surrendered or otherwise gone missing. Normally, casualty figures are heavily influenced by injuries rather than deaths. For instance, the Belfer Center says that a combination of modern medical advances and smarter warfighting tactics typically means that the US has a wounded-to-kill ratio in war that ranges between 10 wounded to 1 killed and 17 wounded to 1 killed. But as for Russia, let's just say it's broken another record by flipping the script on what we know about wounded-to-kill ratios in the modern day. In a March 11th article, the Kyiv Independent reported that Ukrainian intelligence has found that Russia's internal estimates for its casualties were 1.315 million at the time. That's roughly in line with the number of soldiers that Ukraine was reporting as casualties at around the same time. But the real headline grabber in these figures is revealed by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. A change has been recorded in the killed-to-wounded ratio among Russian forces. Out of 100% of losses, 62% are killed and 38% wounded, Zelensky revealed. So let's get this straight. The US records a wounded-to-kill ratio of 10 wounded to every 1 killed at his worst. Putin has said, "Hold my vodka," and created a meat grinder where Russia is almost at the point where it has 1 wounded for every 2 killed. This is the type of turnaround that nobody in Russia wants to see, as it means that Putin's military is losing more soldiers outright than it is to injuries from which those soldiers can recover. That's going to create gaps in the Russian military on its own, and there's another major problem, and record being broken, that lies behind this already massive issue. But before we get to that record, we have another. Russia's territorial gains in Donetsk are coming at a higher cost than ever before. Donetsk needs to fall for Russia to claim the Donbass, which has long been the region that Putin demands that Ukraine cede to Russia for a peace agreement to be reached. Putin's favorite mouthpiece, Dmitry Peskov, even said as recently as May 13th that Ukraine needs to withdraw its forces from the Donbass to open a corridor to peace talks. But what Peskov really meant to say was, please leave and stop killing record numbers of our soldiers. According to United 24 media, Russia has reached the point where it's sacrificing more soldiers for less territory than ever before. Russia's military advanced just 53 square kilometers in Donetsk during April. That advance came at the cost of 25,000 Russian soldiers, giving Russia a ratio of 470 soldiers down for every square kilometer of Donetsk that it's gaining. That is a horrendous tally. And we have 2 bits of maths that show us just how bad it is. First up, how this compares to Russia's advances last year. According to the Moscow Times, Russia managed to make its largest single-year advances during the war so far, snatching up a total of 5,600 square kilometers of territory from Ukraine. That's not as impressive as largest single-year advances makes it sound. It still only amounts to 0.94% of Ukraine's territory. Still, if we take the figure as given, along with the National Interest report that Russia has lost an estimated 415,000 soldiers to death, injury or capture in 2025, then we get an interesting ratio of soldiers lost for territory gain. 2025 saw Russia steal territory at a rate of 74.1 casualties per square kilometer. Of course, these figures aren't solely focused on Donetsk. But still, Russia is losing over 6 times more soldiers for every square kilometer that it gains in Donetsk than it was losing to grab the same amount of territory in 2025. That's some new record to have for Putin, and the math starts to look even worse when we look at what's left in Donetsk for Russia to capture. In an April 8th report, back when Russia was only losing 316 soldiers per square kilometer of Donetsk they were taking, United 24 media said that there is somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 square miles of Donetsk that is still in Ukraine's hands. Let's plug our latest casualties per square kilometer figures into those numbers. At the low end, Russia stands to lose 2.82 million of its soldiers to take the rest of Donetsk. But at the high end, the number jumps to 3.29 million. Either way, Putin will be breaking another record, as he has to burn through between double and almost triple the number of soldiers that Russia has lost so far just to take the rest of Donetsk. Something is going very, very wrong here for Russia. And it gets even worse for Putin when we start to look at Russian recruitment. The one thing that has sustained Putin's invasion for over 4 years is that Russia has always managed to replace the soldiers that it's lost in Ukraine. But that has all changed, as for the first time since Putin launched his invasion, Russia is no longer able to sustain the level of volunteer recruitment it needs to keep on sending meat into the grinder. Several sources have said as much, starting with Russia's own deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev. Another of Putin's mouthpieces said in March that Russia was recruiting 27,000 people to its military every month. This was the same March where Ukraine recorded over 35,000 Russian casualties, so the shortfall is obvious. In his Russianomics column, military analyst Yanis Kluger said that Russia was about 20% short of the recruitment that it managed in 2025, as figures have dropped from between 1,000 and 1,200 patsies pulled into Putin's military per day to between 800 and 1,000. And Zelensky himself adds that Russia managed to recruit about 80,000 soldiers during the first 3 months of 2026, which is around 9,000 fewer than the casualties it experienced in the same period. The figures all roughly align, and according to United 24 media, all of this means that Russia is now in the position where it faces a rough monthly recruitment deficit that falls somewhere between 10 and 15%. There seems to be nothing that Russia can do to reverse the flow either. More records are being broken in the regions of Russia from which Putin recruits, as one-off signing bonuses are skyrocketing. Spiegel International reports, in some regions of St. Petersburg, those one-off bonuses have climbed as high as $58,500. The Belgian-Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce in Russia says that the average salary in Russia works out to about $1,290, so that means that Russia is offering signing bonuses that are more than 3.7 times the amount that the average Russian gets paid in a year. It still isn't working. Recruitment is done as casualties are up, and with its wounded-to-killed ratio, Russia can't even rely on cycling previously injured soldiers back to the front to make up the shortfall. Too many of them are dead in the fields and cities of Ukraine. And Ukraine wants to make it all so much worse for Russia. We've spoken before about Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov's stated goal of 50,000 Russian casualties per month. Ukraine isn't there yet. It has around 15,000 more monthly casualties to go. However, the spring offensive is now underway, and as the weather improves in Ukraine, the size and scale of Russia's assaults are likely to grow. That's the sort of record that Putin would want to see. But if Ukraine has shown us anything during the first few months of 2026, it's that its defenses are capable of inflicting casualties on a scale that we've never seen before. More Russian assaults will just mean more of the records that Putin doesn't want being broken. And if Ukraine is able to reach Fedorov's 50,000 target, that will finally be enough to make the attritional campaign that Putin is waging impossible to maintain without forcing Russia's president to resort to drastic measures such as mobilization. The records just keep falling for Putin. Starting to feel like we need to give Guinness a call to make a special book of records just covering Russia's catastrophic failures in Ukraine. 2026 has been a disaster for Russia so far. The spring especially so. And in a moment we're going to reveal just how bad the spring is going for Russia, as well as two of the key reasons why Putin's plans for 2026 have collapsed so chaotically. But before we do, we want to remind you that you are watching The Military Show. There's a lot more where this comes from, so hit subscribe if you're getting value from the channel. So what does Russia's miserable spring really mean for Putin? All of the broken records are enough to embarrass him on a global scale. But what he is overseeing right now is the very worst period that Russia has experienced in Ukraine since 2023, and that's made even worse when it comes off the back of a 2025 where Russia seemed to be slowly moving into the ascendancy. It's worth remembering that 2023 was also the year that Ukraine launched its counteroffensive against Russia. Though that counteroffensive was ultimately a failure in terms of achieving the operational goals that Ukraine set, it still managed to provide Ukraine with a net territory gain, at least for a month or two. If that counteroffensive didn't exist, the first few months of 2026 would officially be the worst that Russia has experienced during its entire invasion. Let's talk about territory for a moment. Ukraine has been making things even worse for Russia with a counterattacking push in the south that is designed to ruin Putin's plans for Donetsk. That counterattack has eliminated the buffer zone that Russia wanted to use to protect Putin's, well, we were going to say rampaging, but stuttering seems like a better word. Anyway, the stuttering Russian forces in Donetsk were supposed to be protected by the buffer zone that no longer exists. Now, Ukraine can send troops further north, and Russia is being forced to divert resources and soldiers to handle a push that Putin never saw coming. That push has gained Ukraine more than 400 square kilometers by March 10th, United 24 media reports. And if we move into April, the push continued as Russia slowed down. That led to Ukraine recording its first net territorial gain over Russia since the 2023 counteroffensive or August 2024. If we're counting the August 2024 counter-invasion into Kursk. Either way, it's another record broken for 2026 that Putin didn't want to see, as Ukraine ended up ahead by 111 square kilometers by the end of the month. We're still waiting to see if Ukraine can build on this remarkable turnaround in May. If Russia maintains its glacial pace of 53 square kilometers taken per month in Donetsk, our money is on Ukraine. Oh, and just to deliver a little kick to Putin while he's down, in its May 10th assessment of Russia's battlefield progress, the Institute for the Study of War said that Russia has failed to achieve any sort of significant operational progress over the past year. Even the taking of Pokrovsk, which was once seen as a potential death blow for Ukraine, doesn't mean much anymore. as Russia took so long to take the city that Ukraine was able to adjust its logistics and turn the Donetsk fortress belt into the death trap that we see today. Putin should be scratching his head and wondering why this is all happening. Even if he isn't, the answers are right there in front of him. It's all about drones on a massive scale. FPV drones are the main deliverers of death to Russia's soldiers. United 24 media says that they are now responsible for about 90% of Russia's losses on the front, and that Ukraine has absolutely saturated the already lethal kill zones that it had created ahead and behind of the front lines with these drones. Ukraine planned all of that well in advance. At the beginning of 2026, Euromaidan Press reported that Ukraine planned to build around 7 million drones over the course of the year. Hey, would you look at that? Another record. Though it's a positive one this time. It's also Ukraine's record, which will leave Putin even redder in the face. However, for as important as Ukraine's FPV drones have become for everything that it's achieving on the Russian casualty front, the unsung but increasingly important stars of the show are the middle-range drones that Ukraine has developed. These drones provide Ukraine with a capability that it only had in limited quantities during the past years of the war with Russia: the ability to strike the Russian near rear practically at will. That concept is hardly new for Ukraine, though its strikes in the occupied territories previously made heavy use of Western-made systems, such as the HIMARS multiple-launch rocket system, as well as airstrikes from fighter jets launching guided bombs and missiles at targets behind the front lines. The introduction of a new generation of middle-range drones into the mix has been a massive difference-maker for Ukraine, because they allow for the destruction of Russian logistical nodes, command posts, and so much more of the infrastructure that supports Putin's forces on the front. The maths here is really simple. Russia minus its rear equals record-breaking casualties on the front lines. The big difference that Ukraine's middle-range drones make is that they allow Ukraine to cost-effectively strike against Russia at distances between 20 and 200 kilometers beyond the front lines. FPV drones can't go that far, and more expensive long-range drones are better suited for use against targets inside Russia itself. Zelensky recognizes the crucial role these middle-range strikes play. He's already called them a top priority for Ukraine, and that prioritization has led to yet another record being broken. In April, Ukraine doubled the number of these strikes that it conducted when compared to March, and quadrupled them in comparison to February, Zelensky revealed on May 5th. There's a clear scaling up of a new type of campaign happening here, so look for more middle-range records to be shattered in May. What we see in all of this is a true juxtaposition of record-breaking success. Ukraine's records are all positive. More Russian casualties than ever, net territory gains, and more middle-range strikes conducted are all signs of a warfighting machine that has momentum. But Russia's records, there isn't a single one of them that is good for Putin. Russia is losing soldiers at record highs, recruiting at record lows, and frankly, failing to achieve anything with the spring offensive.
And that was Ukraine. And I like to play this because, first of all, it's a current event, and second of all, because it's a good example of propaganda and demonstrates that propaganda doesn't have to be about lying. And matter of fact, it's not necessary. It shouldn't be about lying. This is simply about telling one side of the story. In this case, the Ukrainian side. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.